So I am talking into it. I'm kind of.
It seems silly for me to sit over here.
Yes.
I was just hoping to be on it.
Did you have your tablet?
Well, I was hoping
Yeah,
to
so
be
I
on two tables.
should.
Yeah, we're all hoping that they'll all be filled.
Well, except for the space story.
Well, if you have like a guest thing, I could just,
There is, it should be a guest, is there?
There is a guest. I was in
Yeah.
it this morning, so. I think it's Mark Zion guest.
Oh, really?
Yeah. For ZZ.
there it is, Zion, ZLCAA guest.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think the problem is that down the reception isn't great down here.
Yeah, well, I can do this without this if it doesn't work easily.
Yeah.
There it is. Yes, I don't know really nice.
Yeah, they got all
Oh, you're gonna put it on the screen? Oh, okay.
Somebody
Yeah, that's
reminded us
fancy.
of Labrador.
He said there's.
And so, somebody like.
Look at that.
Look at that.
Area.
I'm so impressed.
Okay, so there you go.
Hey, thanks. That'll make it a little bit easier.
Yeah, yeah.
This is Pastor Jim.
Hopefully we won't get any advertisements that come up for something that embarrasses us.
Yes. So this is one, and then there's
Thanks
one
for
around the
coming.
corner.
Normally, we have a few more people here.
Just grab
Okay,
you.
this is a fine
Where
group.
they go.
And they'll dribble in.
They'll dribble in, okay.
We're gonna have faith formation.
I see.
Although do you want coffee?
No, I'm good, thanks.
Well, here, let's just go up here. I'll show you where the other one is.
Girls, I love girls. Some people would say.
I don't say that without forethought.
Yeah, but, you know, it's amazing what people will
Mourning.
This is Audrey. Have you met Audrey?
I don't think so.
Audrey, this is Jennifer.
I'm Jennifer.
Nice to meet you.
I'm Sonia's daughter.
Ah,
And she's married to Bob Thompson, whom you know and like
Oh, yes.
sings in the choir.
Oh, he's a lovely man.
well, I'd have to kind of agree with you, but, you know, I am a bit partial.
Well, I'm the, you're, nothing against you, Audrey.
Sure, Margie, I know.
But I think I can
You can see
see
the
that.
screen better that way.
You met Margie?
I believe so.
No. Huh?
Have we met?
No? I
Okay.
don't think so. I'm Margie Reynolds.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Fish, Sonia's daughter.
Are you just visiting?
Good to
Are
meet
you
you.
here permanently?
No, I moved back home.
We followed her back here.
Well,
This lady
excellent.
needed my,
Drive for me and.
I'm driving this evening.
Well, that's excellent.
Well, and do a few other things.
She's not here just to drive.
I'm just.
Okay, so is this Facebook Live or too? Because if it is, that changes what I'm gonna say.
No, so this is, it's just simply recorded, and then it'll be uploaded to our website.
Oh, I see. Okay, great. All right. Well, thanks for coming. So since we do have a pretty intimate group here, let me see if I've got, I'm missing a couple. So we have Audrey, Sonia, Jennifer, Lois, Margie,
And Christy.
Christy.
How are you? I was trying to start another table
Well, that's why I started and then I moved over here.
for all the people who are going to come.
Wherever you're comfortable there, Christy. So really, I wanted to just use this time to get to know you, have you get to know me a little bit better. One of the things that's happening in our conference is that we are trying to do more activities together. You know, we've done the collection of the plastic wrap, and we want to be more connected, our ELCA churches in the Ann Arbor and Ypsilanti area. It's a good thing for a bunch of reasons. One of them is that sometimes another pastor has to step in when your pastors are on vacation or when I'm on vacation, and if people know the pastor, at least by sight, it's a little bit more comfortable when that happens. But the other thing is that this time in our world, we're facing some pretty big stuff. And people of faith, all faiths in my opinion, we really need to be doing more together, right? There's strength and courage in numbers, right? So that's what I wanted to use this time for. I noticed in the announcements they said they gave what I was talking about a title, which was something about blogging, so I thought, oh, I better put up my blog. So this is my blog, Take Off Your Shoes. It is 10 years old this year. And every so often I think about taking it down and being done with it, except that before I became a pastor, I was a journalist. And so I have a ton of my writing here categorized. I can easily find it. But one of the things that's kind of tricky about having a blog is how often do you put something out there for people? You know, you get regular readership and they want to read more, which creates pressure on you to write more. And when you're a pastor, you're already writing sermons and newsletter articles, etc. But I will say this about my blog. It started 10 years ago. I was underemployed in one of my calls and I was frustrated. And a friend suggested I do something like this as a way of coping and processing with what was happening. And it made a huge difference. It made a huge difference because then I had readers and then I felt like, oh, I'm not underemployed. I'm bivocational. I have two things going on here. So this is my blog, Take Off Your Shoes. It's based on Exodus story of Moses and the burning bush, and God saying, take off your shoes, you're standing on holy ground. I periodically change this part and show all different kinds of shoes there. And then there's an introductory page that kind of tells about me, and then if you go over to the you know, it's kind of funny, I don't ever go to my blog, other people do. If you go here, recent posts, then you can see stuff I've written recently, but there's all kinds of things to click on. So I thought where I would take you today for a minute is, since I just gave this sermon, there's my new daughter-in-law, Ashley, with her tattoo. Isn't she fetching?
Yeah.
Yeah, so she's been the one that's been educating me. It's so fun to have a young woman in my life, having had two sons. You know, my sons, God bless them, for Mother's Day, they would maybe send me a text, a card, a phone call sometimes. She sent me an entire basket filled with stuff for the bath and makeup and all of this stuff, and I thought, oh, this is fun. So that's Ashley. I guess I want to know, is anybody here a blogger? Does anyone write online for others to see?
I don't know what blogging is really because I don't do that, but I have started writing to my sister
Yes.
because she doesn't have much to say and she doesn't write. So, and then I make copies for my son and assorted nieces, you know, so it's spreading out a little bit, you know. But it's
Okay.
not something that they can tap into.
I see. Okay, so blogging, I didn't know what it was forever. In fact, even now I can't really tell you what the acronym blog stands for, but it's an online, I'm sure part of it's online, it's an online journal. And there's all different kinds. There's some that people just post photographs. There's travel journals. Mine has all kinds of stuff. It has religion, it has politics, it has my travel journals, it has personal reflections. So it is subdivided, and you can click around and find different parts of it. So this one that I just, and anybody can access it. And the thing that is kind of unfortunate, the upside is anybody can access it. So I get a report at the end of the year that tells me how many people have read my blog that year and from how many different countries. And I'm up to 27 countries. And so what people do is they type in a keyword and then they'll get a list of articles that they could potentially read about it, and that's how they find me. And it's kind of neat. It keeps track of all these stats, which is always good for our sense of wanting to continue to write. So let's see. I have a part here, what I'm reading now, 40 Rules of Love. Here's a picture. See, I do photography too. Maybe that I baptized. But this one, this blog post that I showed you that had a picture of Ashley at the top, it's called Shopping We Can Live With. And it lists the things, some of the things I talked about in my sermon, my Nothing New. Isn't that the best name for these sneakers? Nothing New is the brand on these sneakers made from bottles. No, they're the best, aren't they? Yes.
No, I said they look just like Converse All-Stars.
Yeah, and they're comfortable, and I can, and they have a Nothing New here, and I confess that you feel a little righteous wearing them. So, yeah.
I'm interested in
The laundry detergent?
Yes.
Yeah, so this was a find. This was a find. They're called True Earth. And this company is in British Columbia, and they're listed on here too, I believe. They're in British Columbia, so you take one out and you actually split it, and you only put one in unless you have been walking the dog in the mud, and then you put two in. And they dissolve, and I tested them last night, and everything came out great, and they smelled good. So there's, so what I did in this research is I just typed in sustainable laundry soap. And I did that with every product that I wanted to buy. Sustainable this, I couldn't believe the good work.
Wow.
So I wanted to tell you, in fact, this one here, 10 Tree makes apparel, clothing for people and pets. And they plant trees. Their website says, at 10 Tree, we empower everyone to plant trees with their purchases while offering sustainably made products for everyone to enjoy. So, we all know that part of what we're supposed to do is plant trees. We know this, right? But I have no green thumb. I have no land. I live in an apartment. I can't, for the life of me, figure out how I do that. So every product that you buy from 10 Tree, so great, comes with this little wooden, it looks like the cross-section of a tree. Tag. Has a number on it. Then you can go to their site and you plug in the number on your article of clothing, and it will show you a map of the world and where your trees have been planted. And then they grow, and you can check back. And for every article, they plant 10 trees. So I bought my son's sweatpants and my daughter-in-law pajama bottoms from there, and they both got their coin. And they thought that coin was every bit as good as the product. And so it just feels good doing business with them. So their trees are in Madagascar.
Which needs trees.
Which needs trees. Which needs trees. And then,
Australia.
yeah, but it's a real education. Like a lot of these companies I found, not only are they serious about their practices and their products and the things that are used to make them, but they're very educational. A lot of these websites, I learned more by going to their website. And I am not one that's going to sit down and read an entire book on ecology, but I'll read when I'm buying something so that, about the company and what they want to teach me. So that's what that's about. So a blog is a nice thing. It's not that hard to set up if you are interested and you have a mind for tech or a person in your life that has a mind for tech. They're not hard to set up, and then when I write to it, it's just like typing. You just type a paper and post it to your blog. And then you can see how many people read it. This one that I did around Christmas, Shopping We Can Live With, I got a report that said 250 people in 3 countries read it in 24 hours.
That's a bit mind-blowing.
Right? It is. And it's so encouraging. Because as a writer, it can get really lonely when you're just putting your voice out there. And then you wonder, did that matter? Did that help anyone? Let's see if I go down to the bottom here.
And people can post responses, right?
You can turn on comments or not. Either way that you want to do that. Let's see.
Sometimes it's better not to have
Yeah,
comments
yeah.
on. 'cause
Sometimes
people-
it is.
because people sometimes can post things that are
Terrible
not things,
things.
so sometimes you have to make that choice.
Yeah. So here's a fun story. I do know that the last time I looked, in 10 years, I've had 78,000 people visit. So that's kind of nice. But there was one year when I wrote a story about the Shawshank Redemption film, because I was living in Ohio, and there's a prison there that it was filmed at, and it also tied into a sermon I gave. So as soon as I posted it, within a couple hours, I was getting all of these messages, notifications on my computer and on my phone that said all these people were reading it, and there were so many that I was sure that someone had broken into my site and messed with it. And then I got scared because I thought, oh, what if they posted that I might not want on my site? So I called WordPress, which is where I house my blog. I called the company and said, can you check this? I'm getting, my phone and my laptop are blowing up with people with it. It says all these people, 25,000 today, have read. And they came back and they said, no, actually you're on the top 10 list on something called Reddit, which I didn't even know what Reddit was. But it turns out I happened to write it at the 40th anniversary of Shawshank Redemption, which I didn't even know, I didn't even mention it, but that coincided with people's interest on searching for Shawshank Redemption. So that was my moment of fame right there.
Well, I think another thing that people do these days, I don't, but I know that the students that I work with do, is they see something on blog that they're particularly interested in, they retweet it.
Yes.
They tweet it with just the link, and then people see that if there's a comment about it, and then they link on it. So that's the way things quickly, as we call, go viral. That's how things go viral.
Yeah, and it's kind of fun. I mean, I'm on the computer anyway, so it's kind of fun to be getting feedback instead of me just going out and finding things. One of the stories that I wanted to tell that I wrote about on this blog, this is a few years ago, I went to, let's see if I can find it, go home. And then see these up here, can you see my favorites? These are categories of things that I've written about. If I go over here, I am on the BRIC team, BRIC, Building Racial Reconciliation in Christ. Is someone here on that?
Yeah.
No.
Okay, but
You know about it.
yeah, so I am on that as of last year. And so we study racism. Mostly we study and reflect on where and how it shows up in our own lives. One of the things that people don't always understand about it, I think they think that the BRIC team wants to go around and educate anybody, and we will do workshops, but mostly when we meet, it's about confronting our own past and our own, where does this show up, how does it show up. It's a very humbling thing, and I have been very involved with and active in the work of anti-racism for my whole life, and I still find things where I think, nope, I didn't handle that well. So I want to tell you about this. So I went to Washington, D.C. There's a picture of Union Station that I took. I went to Washington, D.C. a couple years ago for National Council of Churches conference. The reason that I went is because they were having a Reconciling Jesus. It was a group that was led by the Episcopalian priest Curry, is his name. He was leading an interfaith assembly in a candlelight vigil for some of the things that were happening in this country. And I wanted to participate as a pastor in the ELCA in the vigil. That's why I went. But when I got there, I found out that what I had signed up for with the National Council of Churches, which was part of the reason that I went, was they were doing a 2-day workshop on the school-to-prison pipeline, which I didn't know as much about it as I did when I was done. So get this, I go into this room, and these 7 teachers come in. They are all people who have been incarcerated, one of them for 28 years, who have been found to be innocent and been exonerated. They became our teachers for this class. Well, one of them I recognized immediately, and I wrote about him on my blog. This is a two-part blog where I write about my experience with him. But when he started telling his story, when he got out, he changed his name. But he was starting to tell his story, and I thought, I recognize that story. Well, for a long time, I used to pull articles out of the paper, because I was a journalist, about people who were wrongfully incarcerated. I just thought it was such a shame. And I threw these articles in my drawer. Well, I had in my drawer the article on the day that he had been released 3 years prior, and now he was a teacher in this class that I never meant to sign up for. I thought I was going to a vigil, right? So this is God active in our lives, huh? So the next day, we had tickets, they got everyone tickets to the African American National Museum. Have you been to it?
No.
Yes,
Oh, it's stunning, isn't it?
absolutely, mind-blowing.
It is, and not all despair. I mean, it's hard to see it. You start in the basement and work your way up, but wow, the contributions, right? So he and I ended up touring this museum together, and he was like doing a commentary on all of the things that we were witnessing. It was an amazing experience. And so I wrote about it on my blog, which then enabled my mother in Florida to hear, and my brother to hear, and my uncle to hear, and my friends in Canada, without me calling all of them or writing them a letter and telling them the story, because it was a profound story. So that's one thing that I've used it for. What we're doing now over at King of Kings, we've started a podcast. You know what a podcast? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we started a podcast. It's called Be Ye Lifted, and we're going to be putting the link for it on here every week. It's a song by a band, Roots and Wings, that sometimes leads our worship, and then it's the sermon. So we're going to be putting a link to the podcast on here too. And it'd be interesting to see, because to me that's like a whole different thing. It'd be interesting to see if people that are accustomed to coming to my blog listen to that as well.
Is it your weekly sermons?
Yeah, it's my weekly sermons, yeah. Yeah, but we have already heard from, we started it about 8 weeks ago. Heard from a lot of people who they can't get out, right? People in the hospital, people who aren't able to drive anymore. A fair amount of 20 and 30 somethings have listened, and that, because that, like the blog, you get statistics. So
Are you going to put something about the movie Just Mercy?
I wrote about Just Mercy.
I'm going to Montgomery for a month for civil rights.
Are you?
Yeah, and Brian Stevenson's going to be talking.
Yeah, in fact, here we go, here's Just Mercy. Let me give you just a flavor about what this is. So I quoted Brian Stevens, each of us is more than the worst thing we've ever done.
And is it be lifted, 2 words? No.
Be Ye Lifted?
Oh, be ye lifted.
Be Ye Lifted is our podcast, yeah. Yeah.
There you are.
You know, there's a book out called The Guardian. It's about a team that frees people who've been wrongly convicted. It's a bestseller. I can't use the best. The guy that writes all the Racketeer and all those. Grisham? Yeah, Grisham. And it's pretty revealing. I mean, just what happened to these people.
That book,
Just Mercy changed my life. That book changed my life.
And that was about, he was innocent, and he'd been there 20 years, and they had trumped up all his, against him, and
Yeah.
The University of Michigan Law School, the students work a lot for exonerating people that are in prison that should not be
Did
there.
Brian speak?
So they, I don't know
No, they
whether,
didn't go there.
no, but I mean, they've actually successfully gotten a number of people exonerated.
Yeah, one of the things, like Just Mercy introduced me to the, what is it called, the Justice Institute in Birmingham. And the fact that this young lawyer had decided from this one case to, that, you know, it turned the whole road of his life. And I was so inspired in hearing that story. And then after I wrote about it, I got invitations to come and speak because people had been following my blog and they needed a speaker and they knew this is something I'm interested in. So it's a way to connect. I would say another thing that I like about this is that I've been working for maybe 15 years now at minimalism. Part of it is because I've known so many people who the parents die and the children are left to clean out entire barns. Entire barns full of stuff. And I think I don't want to do that. And not only that, I don't want to worry about what they might find that they don't need to read, you know. So I've been doing that. And one thing that this form of keeping track of your life does is it cuts back on a ton of paper. And I'll tell you another thing that might be interesting to a church this size. When I was in Florida, I was at a church this size, and hands down the best youth fundraiser that we did was we had stations all over a room like this with high school and college kids, and we invited people, and they had like, remember Lucy with her psychiatrist booth? Okay, so they made booths like that, and it was all tech, and they said, come, bring any question you
Your
have.
cell phone, your computer.
We had to turn people away. At the end of 6 hours, there were people waiting in line. We had to turn people away. And they made so much money.
You
And
mean they answered questions?
yeah, they came up and said, my phone is, I can't get it. And they would sit and they,
I've been suggesting for years that we run classes for people who need help with computers and getting online, because there are lots of people, you know, older who don't know what to do when they reach a firewall or
and
something.
you know, it's embarrassing because we feel like we should know all of it. I mean, I worked at Hewlett-Packard Company when computers were being born, and so I've stayed as current as I can, but there's too much to know. There's too much. But when everybody's milling around asking, you just don't feel as embarrassed, right? And sometimes it really is the phone, it's not you. Right? So it gave me some dignity.
So did these people volunteer their time on your?
Yeah, the youth volunteered their time because they were going on a mission trip and they were raising funds.
And they're the smart ones.
And so we had all the youth, they were the counselors, people came, I mean, all kinds of people came, not just in the church. We advertised it just on the sign for a couple weeks. It was packed. We couldn't even believe how many people came. So that was kind of an interesting thing. I wanted to share with you this one poem that's on here, so because it's not all really dark, but my youngest son is an English teacher now in the inner city of Columbus, and he's a writer, and he wrote this poem. Here it is. And he wrote it in 10th grade. And he never liked it, but gosh, I love this poem. Listen to this. If I were a cloud, I would wander, but I already do. I have another excuse to gaze at you. I'd spit rain and absorb evaporation. I'd turn into a dragon by means of imagination. I would be mammoth, and I would cast shadows. I would stand still with time and discuss box scores. I would be fluffy and probably pale, and over your beautiful face cast a veil. And amidst all this, I think I'd find time to gaze at the ground, wish it were mine, to wish, to lust, to want to be free, to swim with the fishes and you in the sea.
Very nice.
And so whenever I want to say, you guys, you got to read my son's poem, then bam, there it is. So, do you have any comments, questions? I don't really
How do
want
we
to.
get on your blog?
If you put in.
MarieDuquette.org or take off your shoes.
Yeah, when I was searching for it, I had to put blog after it.
I put Marie Duquette blog, and it came up.
Because I was about
Take off my
take off your shoes, that's
Yeah.
your front door mats.
Yeah, and then if you subscribe, what that means in blogging language is that every time I do write something or post something new, you'll get a message that says I did, and you can go read it. See, it says over here, follow, take off your shoes if you click on that. So,
So,
I remember that blog comes from web blog.
The word what?
oh, so it's the last B of web
Yes.
plus log. Okay, good, thanks. It seems like if I'm going to talk about blogging, I should know that.
Yeah.
And I have a shoe picture for you.
You do? I would love it.
It was when my puppy first came into my life, and she was a rescue dog, and she would hoard things. And we picked up her pillow one day, and there were 7 different pairs of shoes lined up and stacked together.
Okay, so you need to send it to me as a JPEG because I just got a puppy last year for the first time. For the first time,
Well, that was something.
right? So I would switch it, and my puppy looks just like your puppy. I'll show you. Yeah, mine's a black Labrador too.
Yeah.
That would be really funny to put that on my blog. Yeah.
Oh, that is so cute.
Like, lined them all around her. She would find a corner and pull out everything she wanted to.
And she got pairs.
Yeah, she got pairs of shoes. Gathered them all over my head.
So did you say put down follow?
Yeah.
Is
If
it
you
follow or
can,
subscribe?
it's this blue thing.
It's got one corner turned up.
There, follow, take off your shoes, right there. Well, gosh, I guess I'm not going to close it now that I'm telling new people about it.
When people post comments on your blog,
Yeah.
do you sometimes get negative comments, and how do you deal with those? Like when I read articles on MLive, there'll
Yeah.
be strings of comments, and some of them are really nasty.
They're really nasty, yeah, so you can set it up when you set up your blog. I set mine up that I will take comments, but they have to be approved before anybody else sees them. So then I'll get a message that says I've got a comment, and I'll go read it and decide whether I want it to be posted or not, and I just check the box if I want it to be, and if I don't do that. I haven't had a lot, but I've had a couple people that wanted to debate and get in an argument, and that's not what it is. You know, if they really want to push into their point of view, then they need to make their own blog, right? But sometimes it's nice. I've had people leave comments that something was particularly helpful, that it hit them at a point of life where they needed to read that, and that's always helpful. So, yeah. So, first thing that I ever got published when I was in journalism was on 2 days, I guess it was about 3 days after Columbine. And so I have quite a few posts here. I've got gun violence, I've got all of the ones things that I've written since then. I was this one, Prisons of Tears, the Pulse nightclub. I was at a Synod Assembly presiding at communion when the whole Pulse nightclub thing happened. And then I was at the Synod Assembly reading prayers when the Emmanuel 9 happened. And I was in Florida. So I wrote here, and of all the therapies that I engage in, I will say that my blog is right up there for helping me to process my own grief and outrage and wonder and joy when I see things changing. It was hard for me to not be inspired at all the youth that came out in Parkland, that whole, how many youths got involved in politics and civics at such a young age, because I sure did. And don't know about you, but I wasn't active, I wasn't following as closely as all of them are. And that's encouraging, that they're getting engaged in the process young. So,
You know, I think, I often wonder what this time of political turmoil and so much rage and hate is going to do to our society, especially young people, our children's age. And do you see that? Do you address that at all? Because I think there needs to be a way for them to deal with that. I know my own daughter she listens to podcasts and tries to keep up, and I wonder what it's doing, the hate that comes from that, what it's doing.
Well, I can speak from personal experience that the 20-somethings and some of the high school kids that I work with, and I've done a lot with that age group, and they're struggling mightily with depression and anxiety. That seems to be the way that it is manifesting, and aren't we all? I feel sometimes like I want to just say to them all, we never intended for this to be our world as you come of age. It was never our heart's desire, right? And that's why I think it's so important in today's sermon when I talked about, Jesus allowing John to take the lead. I think it's important to listen to these young voices, They're not reaching for words the way I sometimes am, but it's, they have really good ideas. And they, did you know about in the 2018 vote in November about how the Parkland students created a T-shirt that had a scanner on it? Did you hear this?
No.
Okay, they created these T-shirts that had a barcode on it. And they went door to door trying to get people to vote. And if the person said, I'm not registered, they could have the person take their phone and scan the barcode on their shirt and register right there.
How innovative.
Right?
Is that just in Florida?
So, well, it started with the kids in Parkland, but I understood that they got hundreds of these shirts and they had students across the nation who were registering people this way. So I guess one of the things that I am using to fight despair is stories like that. Like, we don't know what we can create through God's Spirit, but we do know we're living in a time where a lot more people are interested in saying, we got to create something, right? We have work to do here. And there's a lot of people in that frame of mind. So I take hope from that.
There's also, I subscribed a couple of years ago to a publication called, I think it's just called Good News. And it comes once a month to your house, and it's just all the good that's going on in the world. And then I also did something like that on Facebook, where I subscribed to something that was just uplifting stories, like the Upworthy.
Right, so Upworthy. So Good News Network is 20 years old now. And that's all they've been doing for 20 years. Real journalism, only reporting good news. You can order T-shirts from them that helps their cause, and the T-shirts say "Good happens," right? So that's a worthwhile thing, and I think we do have to lift things like that up, because there is a lot of goodness in the world.
I wonder about those Parkland kids, whether they feel like the legislators aren't really paying attention to them.
Yeah, right.
But they did get a little movement.
They
Which
did
must,
a little in the beginning, but not so much since. Yeah, so they must sit around thinking, what next? What can we do?
But even though the legislators, many of them didn't listen and didn't act on what they said,
Yeah.
I have also noticed a lot of teachers, a lot of parents, a lot of pastors are supporting them. I'm on various social media outlets, and I have had conversations with some of the Parkland kids because they see that I'm a pastor and they see that I've written about guns, and gun control and things. And so they engage with me, and that's one of the nice things about the internet is that you can reach people that you wouldn't otherwise be able to talk to with your particular gift. So Do I have an ability to talk to 20-somethings?
The thing that I find so scary though is, like you put in anything and there's so much stuff out there. Like,
There is.
It's hard to find the positive voices amidst the negativenesses.
That's true.
So like, our daughter has issues with anxiety. She doesn't watch the news. She says
Right.
the news makes me anxious.
Right.
So I just wrote down the good news, that I should send her. Because
Yeah.
she says, if I watch, because Bob watches the news all the time, so, when she's at our house, it's like, turn the TV off.
Right.
She doesn't need to see CNN or anything else.
Right. And there's new publications that are coming out that will give you like 5 bullet points first thing in the morning. This is what you need to know today. This is what you need to know today. And I think that those are helpful because it's true. The news can really affect our ability, like we get paralyzed and then we're not doing any good.
Right,
So,
overwhelmed by all by everything that you have to fight.
Well, and also, I sometimes worry that we spend so much time looking at things on the internet that we're not, you're not doing anything. I mean, you're educating yourself, but
Right.
you're also not necessarily, if you're writing or blogging, you may
Yes.
be doing
You're
something
reaching
positive.
somebody else.
But if you're merely just reading it and processing it, maybe you should be doing something
Right.
about it.
Right.
It's hard because we only have so many hours in any particular day or week or month.
Right. My son, who's 25, he teaches his students, he says, posting a comment online does not a conversation make. But it's nice to know also that the teachers that are in the high schools are starting to now teach to this problem of how much is too much, where do we get our news from, how do we discern if it's true, that they're teaching.
That's critical.
Oh, absolutely.
I wonder what your opinion is of the ELCA's advocacy around social justice and voting rights and all that they've done. I personally like that, and I wish our congregation would take that on more. We had a little bit last year, which was controversial, I think. And I see churches as, well, Jesus was a wild man when it came to justice.
Sure.
And I think we are not wild enough. But I do like the ELCA's presence in the area of advocacy. I kind of like your thoughts.
Well, overall, I've been pleased with some of the things that they've come out with. Certainly their social statements, we've got one. We've got so many. I think we're up to like 28 or 30. I'm not sure that congregations know about them or use them in any kind of a way, and I think that's unfortunate. The ELCA also tends to make a statement, but let the individual pastors and congregations decide what, if anything, they're going to do with that statement. And sometimes that has been frustrating to me. I wanted them to take a stronger leadership role, and yet I understand that if we scare people away, that's not helpful either, and everyone is at a different place of coming along and understanding what's happening, what does advocacy look like, why, where is it tied to the gospel. But overall, I appreciate the ELCA's position. I just wish they came out a little bit stronger, a little bit sooner, but that's me. So,
Yeah, I guess it's up to the congregation to take those statements and run with them.
right.
It is, but
Yeah.
it sits in the pastor's office or someplace and doesn't get.
Well, we can get them online.
Yeah, and honestly,
But it's got to become part of the conversation.
yeah, but I'm not sure it has to be driven by the pastor because these social statements
No,
are
I
really
didn't mean
complicated.
that. I
You
just
know,
meant-
no, but I think you're right. I think that if there was, a group that reviewed them and pulled out the 5 bullet points, here's what you need to know that the ELCA believes about just war. Just war. We have a social statement on just war. That would be a really good one for us to know something about right now, right?
And environment, I was
Yeah.
in a group that has pulled out the environment statement from the ELCA, and it's 20 years old. And,
Yes.
you know, as good as it was
Right.
then, it doesn't say enough now. It doesn't say, look, folks, if you want a world that's worth living in, you have to be much more active.
Sex trafficking,
Yeah, I mean, they've done a lot of really good work, but I think that we need a better process for what do we do with them now that they're
Yes,
written so
yes.
that they're more useful.
Yeah.
You know, I think that a lot of people, faithful people, we want to draw from the well of what Jesus says. What does it mean that I am a Christian? I'm trying to be faithful living in a time like this. What ought my response be? And the only really way to do that is to stay engaged in the study of both Scripture and the event that's happening. And that could be a full-time job, right? So anybody that's interested in this, though, I think any church right now would find at least a circle of 8 that would want to, you know, roll up your sleeves and take a look and at least help others understand what it says. So anyway, I think we have to go, don't we?
So no.
No.
7:58, the sermon is at 11.
Yeah, I have to go before the sermon.
Yeah, you have to go.
I'll tell you one that's coming though. Perhaps you know that this year we're going to have our first commemoration of the Emmanuel 9. Did you hear that?
Yes, oh yeah.
Yeah, the first commemoration of the Emmanuel 9. It's going to be a national day of mourning in the
I don't know what
ELCA.
that is.
So the Emmanuel 9 are the 9 people, including pastors, that were killed in Charleston, South Carolina, inside Emmanuel, the church. It happened 3 years ago, I think.
Yeah.
Yes, and there was a documentary that was made about it. And some people who have heard that we're having this National Day of Mourning, depending on how much they've been following it, they're confused, some are angry, some think it's unnecessary. One of the reasons that at Churchwide Assembly they voted to have that is that both the senior pastor who was killed and the shooter were part of ELCA. Yes, and the documentary is well worth seeing. You can probably find it on Netflix or something on your cable, but it's called Emmanuel 9, I believe, and it's really good. Oh, good. Oh, that's good. Yeah, but when people say, why? What is this? We're not doing it for any other tragedy, then you could tell them, oh, it's because in this one, both the victim and the shooter were. Anyway, thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks for caring about this.